April 8th, 2024, pull day 286.6 on body weight. I've been working on getting bigger, but I don't want to gain unnecessary body fat, so I'm happy to be holding 286. I've actually gained about 10 pounds since the new year, so it's going slow, but it's a good quality gain. Here I am today starting my pull day with some rear delt work. This is a cable high pull, which is really good for warming up the shoulders, and it targets the rear delts well. Then I'm using a chest support pad from Storenex called a Bulldog pad for some reverse flies with the dumbbells. Now this isn't a strict reverse fly where I have my hands neutral. You can see there a little bit I do have my hands angled where my thumb is kind of rotated down a little bit more. I find that better hits my rear delts than a true neutral grip, which I feel targets more of the lower traps than the rear delts. On a pull day, I'll typically start with rear delt work, and then I go into back exercises, and then I finish with biceps. By starting with rear delt, I'm making sure that I get them isolated, get some volume into them. And then the rear delts are definitely included in a lot of back rows, especially where the upper arm is away from the upper body. But since my rear delts aren't dominant, I don't get a lot of growth from just basic back work. I do need some isolative work for the rear delts. And I'm excited to be doing more of that now in my training. Back when I used to do powerlifting and more strength-based training, I didn't do it as much. So I feel like those muscles are underdeveloped. So I'm excited to get those growing again. For those two exercises, I did 3 working sets and generally 10 to 14 reps, somewhere in there, just to kind of get some good blood flow, get some good challenge. I do 1, maybe 2 lighter sets, then get right into the harder sets since it's more isolative movements. Now I've moved over and I'm doing some chest-supported one-arm rows. I've really enjoyed this variation for my back development. I feel like I can get a really good stretch. You can see that I can let my shoulder round forward, stretching all the muscles in the middle of my back. So I can stretch the middle and lower traps to really be able to engage those in the contraction when I drive my elbow back. Now, with the Storenex Apex rack, this squat rack that I've set up, they have functional cable columns on each side. It's probably not set up to do what I'm doing right here, but I don't care. It works out really well, and it doesn't hurt the machine. It doesn't hurt me, but it's working out really well. I would love to get a chest-supported row machine for the house. I just don't want to pull the trigger on an expensive machine yet when I feel like there are still maybe some options on what I currently have that I can play with and figure out. So this has been one of my favorite variations as of late. Anytime I'm doing a back row, and this is what I would suggest for anyone else, is to always think of letting your shoulders stretch forward, and then you start driving back the contraction by squeezing your shoulder back using the muscles in the middle of the back. You want to let your shoulders move when you're doing those. Now, I had that paired with a unilateral, so also one arm at a time, seated lat pull down. Now, this is a very specific variation to where my upper arm is going to be very next to my body. So the standing rows we just watched, my upper arm was flared out. So that way I could get a good stretch in the middle and lower traps, get the rear delts involved. Now, for this movement, I have my upper arm closer to my body. I'm also leaning into my arm, which you're going to see more in a couple of future videos here. But I'm leaning into the side I'm doing. I have the arm tucked next to the body. This is really good for isolating the lat, specifically the lower lat, and specifically when you add a pause. This is actually extremely challenging and a very, very, very good isolative focus into the lower lat. In my back development, I really want to build the muscles across my shoulder blades, the lower portion of the traps, really build thickness to my upper back. I want it to look like I'm wearing shoulder pads, football shoulder pads all the time. But even though my focus is more so across the shoulder blades, I don't want to lose lat size. Having nice lats is something that I like aesthetically. I'm just trying to make sure that my lats don't overpower my upper back, which they actually have in the past. Whenever I was doing this strength-based training, doing a lot of deadlifts, my my middle of my back is almost overdeveloped compared to the upper part of my back. So I'm working on finding a balance where I still have my lats being trained, but I want my upper back to grow faster. One of the ways I balance that out is to make sure that when I'm doing lat work, it's something like this where it's super specific to the lower lat connection. And the reason why I'm saying it that way is it helps me grow the size of my lats, but I'm growing it specifically at the lower portion, which is going to help look at the full development of the lat. The lat will look better, even if it's not bigger, because it has a better tie in at the bottom. It's like you're adding the little crispy details to the muscle. I don't need it to be overly massive, but be like what would be considered a high lat, where it's underdeveloped down into the connection. You'll see this in even some high level professional bodybuilders. They're going to have really good lats that tie up into the shoulder to create good upper back width, but they might have underdeveloped lower lats. Not that I am, doing anything better than they do, but I really want to start with that lower lat and let the lat kind of grow from there, and it's going to give me a better quality development over time rather than just mass first. I want an aesthetically pleasing mass as I'm able to gain that. And at 286 body weight, I have been able to gain pretty decent mass. So it is coming along, but I want it to come at the rate in which I can control and the places at which I can control. Now we're going back to the chest supported rows. For these, I was doing sets of 10 to 14 in the first 3 working sets. And then on the cable lat pull downs, I was doing sets of 6 to 10. With that pause, if you go too high of reps, you end up going too light and it doesn't stress the muscle very well. So I like doing lower rep counts. I'll even drop sometimes to like 4 or 5 reps on that. It's pretty wicked movement. It's really good. For this, I really like the volume of these. So I'll do, in today's workout, I did 3 sets of 10 to 14. Then I did 3 sets of 6 to 10. And on the 6th and final set, I actually did a drop set. So I did a lot of volume here. I ended up doing 7 bouts of effort on those rows just because I really like how isolative they are to that mid-back area that I'm really trying to grow and develop. From this angle, you'll be able to better see that I lean into the working side, and you'll be able to see a little bit of the back development that I've been able to get from movements such as this, really getting to develop that lower lat to where my waist is starting to look smaller and smaller. And again, 286 pounds, it's hard to have what would look like a small waist, but exercises such as this, you can see that when I bring my elbow down and I squeeze into that lower lat, how it really helps develop that V taper. The lat kind of comes out of the midsection outward and it creates that V from the waist. This is a really good aesthetic trick to make my waist look smaller by just simply making my lats look bigger, but specifically having them look bigger right from the lower lat connection that connects in at the waist. It wouldn't give me as much of a drastic aesthetic improvement if the lat was only growing from the top down. I want it to grow it from the bottom up. And that's very specific, but it's what I do with all my clients. And it really helps them have just a better quality aesthetic, even if they're not that massive. Like I have one client right now, currently, they're around 180 pounds, and we have cut down from over 200. And in that process, they've actually been able to build muscle because we've been keeping the protein right and the training volume right. And their V taper is looking amazing because the entire time we've been cutting 20 plus pounds off, we've been putting muscle on in the exact spots that we want, which would include these lower lats. So he's very happy to see that he was able to come down 20 some pounds, but he doesn't feel smaller. He actually likes the look that he has better than he did at 20 plus pounds heavier. And then again on these just make sure if you're going to try them, think of keeping that upper arm close to the body and think of getting that good squeeze and contraction at the bottom. Now, along with the back training, all these exercises are helpful. However, you got to make sure you eat right so that way the muscles will actually grow. So when we're in the gym, I'm damaging the muscle tissue, but I'm actually not causing anything to grow right now. Like, there's not growth happening right now. What you're actually doing when you're in the gym is you're stressing the tissues and creating damage. You're actually breaking the structures of the tissues. And then when you go eat food, your body takes that food and repairs the structures and hopefully adds more mass to the broken structures to reinforce them. The body's gonna reinforce the tissues, so the next time if you did the exact same weights, exact same reps, it wouldn't cause as much damage, which is why it's important to progressively overload your workouts, so that way you're constantly pushing the body to have to develop even more and more and more structural improvement, which adds more mass. For me, I aim for around my body weight in protein. Now I know I'm not like 10% body fat. I don't honestly know how much body fat I have. I'd probably be somewhere between like around 18, 20, somewhere in there. So typically, if I would think of body weight per pound, protein per pound of body weight, I would usually estimate a lean body weight, which would be around 10-ish% body fat. So I could probably get away with 250, 260 protein, but I usually have somewhere between 250 and 300, which 300 is kind of more so my target on most days. And then for calories, I found that for me to gain, but do a lean gain, I don't need as many calories as what my body weight might suggest that I need. So I eat around 3,300 to 3,500 calories a day. And along with that 300 grams of protein, that's really helping me grow. In the beginning of the year, I weighed 277, and now I'm fluctuating around 287. So I had 4 weeks of January, 4 weeks of February, 4 weeks of March. So that's 444, that's 12. So first week of April, it's 13 weeks. So in 13 weeks, I've been able to gain 10 pounds. It's a slow gain, but I have felt that I've gotten leaner. I look leaner in my photos. I do take photos every 4 weeks so I can track my visual progress. And then I do weigh myself just to kind of see what's happening, just make sure I'm not gaining too fast. But I'm very happy so far in the year. Been getting good growth, and it's just attributable to consistency in nutrition and making sure that I'm always having some kind of damaged tissue present so something is growing at all times. So even if I have a day off, I know that whatever I did the day before is likely still healing and growing. So I know it's not really a day that I've missed developing more muscle. It's just a day to help recover, maybe CNS, recover some joints, things like that. But I love these as my main movements for the day. So it was 3 sets of 10 to 14 on the chest supported row. And then on this one, I did 3 sets of the 6 to 10 reps. Now, if you don't have a cable station set up like this, you can actually use a lat pull down machine, but do a half kneeling position rather than sitting on the seat. You can actually do a half kneeling position where you kneel behind the seat, or you can set up a free weight bench, how I have my bench here further away from the weight stack. You can set up a free weight bench further away from the weight stack to give you this type of angle in a good stretch. I would prefer and I would recommend that people do it to where the cable's out in front of them. So on the side view of this one, the cable's a good 2 feet out in front of me rather than me pulling straight down from over my head. I feel like straight down from over your head, you're going to get a lot more bicep, a lot more upper lat. Whereas if the cable anchor, the cable pulley is 2 feet out in front of you, you can kind of align your body better and get that lower lat contraction. But that would be a good way to set this up if you don't have this machine. As for the chest supported one arm rows, you can set a free weight bench in front of a weight stack and use that as like your chest support or even like a forearm support. You could have the bench straight up and down and then rest your forearm into the bench, and then that would give you a variation of this. Your gym might also have a chest-supported row machine. I tend to like a standing row like this better because I don't have the weight of my entire body shoving me into the pad, plus the weight of what I'm trying to row. So I don't actually like angled chest supported rows or flat chest supported rows. I've used a bunch of variations of them. One of my favorite machines that's incredibly rare is Raw Motive Works. They have an actual standing row machine. There is a gym in my home near my hometown that has that, and it's fun to see when members of the gym, people I know, I'll see them getting to use that like in Instagram videos. I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous. That's such a good machine. So, but I do like a standing version, or as I said, use a free weight bench and set it next to the cable station, just simply because you don't have all that added pressure in your chest. And typically, that pressure also causes people to extend their stomach to push out against that pressure. And I hate having a distended stomach anytime I'm doing any exercise because essentially you're training your muscles to push out, your abdominal muscles to push out. So I do not want that. I want a nice, smaller waist. So I try to avoid anything where I have to distend my stomach to create additional support and bracing. So now I'm going to be moving into warming up the biceps. I'm doing here just cable for the lower portion. I got two D-ring handles. These are actually from Spud Inc. And just getting a nice curl. It's almost like a preacher curl in the sense that my elbows are out in front of my body a little bit. And I do a little bit of what I would call like rhythm reps. You can see my body's moving a little bit of a quick pace, but there's a nice quick contraction at the top of each one. And I was doing those for sets of 16 to 20 reps. Now I've gone into my heavier sets of these. And for this, I'm aiming for 6 to 10 reps on my heavy sets. So I did the 3 sets of the 10 to 14 reps with the one arm lat pull downs. Now I swapped out the lat pull downs for the bicep curls to start moving into bicep work. And then I switched this to heavier. Since it's heavier weight and I have the option to go down to just 6 to 10 reps, it doesn't really influence the bicep work much. It doesn't take away from it because this is so heavy that I don't accumulate a lot of like burn, a lot of pump. You're more so going for shear force damage here rather than pump damage, like metabolic damage. And then also, you really should be driving the contraction for this movement through the mid back, not your bicep, anyhow. And that's a good indicator. Is if I can do this in bicep exercises, and the bicep exercises don't take away from my performance on this, then I'm doing a good job of using my back, not my biceps. So that's the main goal here, is just squeezing that shoulder back. I want to pull my shoulder back and then drive my elbow back. And that makes sure that the contractional force of the movement comes from the back muscles, not my biceps. Here you can see those bicep curls again, and you can see that the upper arm is angled out in front of me. So I'm doing that on purpose. It does create that little bit of like a preacher position that is very good for getting more constant tension at the bottom, at the full extension of this movement, which is really helpful for creating more growth. We know that when a working muscle is elongated closer to full extension, but heavily weighted, that creates a lot of stress and damage within the tissue. So I want to make sure that I don't lose that extended weight load position. I don't want it to get too easy at the extension. That way I can make sure I get good muscle damage out of the movement so I can get good growth. Now, you can see here, still finishing up these rows. They're definitely a lot heavier, but still getting that extension of the shoulder and the drive back of the shoulder. I would never let this get so heavy that I've had to keep my shoulder in place in order to continue the effort. I want to always be able to let my shoulder move. You can see there I did the drop. So this is the last set of these. I did, I believe, 8 reps, and then I dropped some weight. I think I ended with 200 pound, and then dropped to 140 and did an additional 8 reps. Again, good stretch, good contraction, trying to keep it all in the back. I would much rather leave a rep or two on the table than to cheat and use the wrong muscles or overly stress a bicep or forearm. I'll come back and typically I'll train my pull muscles twice a week. So I know in 3 days I'm coming back and training these muscles again. I don't need to eke out 1 or 2 extra reps and risk any kind of injury when I'm coming right back to do an entire workout in 3 days or so. So I got that right arm in, and now I'm going into the left. So this is a typical rest that I would take between the two. Ends up being probably, if I timed it out, like 30 seconds or so, just enough to catch my breath, get my intensity back up, so I can give a good effort to this bout. So again, I'm going to go for 8 reps on the first weight and then 8 reps on the second weight. My right arm is weaker than my left arm. I am left-handed. So I always make my weak side on unilateral movements go first, and then I match the reps on my strong side. Thankfully, they're not so different that the strong side is like, everything's a piece of cake. It's actually really freaking hard still, but I might be able to eke out like 1 extra rep on my strong side if I let it go first. However, I want to always maintain muscular balance in strength and size. So I always make my weak side go first, and then I'll even that out with the strong side. And I'll do that for any unilateral movement, whether it's upper body, lower body, whatever it might be. So that would be a good suggestion if you want to do that, is if you do have a strong side and a weak side, make the weak side go first, and then the strong side would match that side. And over time, they do balance out. So I've seen that in my development. I've seen that in a lot of clients' development as well. Here's the last set of these cable curls. Again, elbows out in front of the body. I want to make sure that that full extensional position is still loaded and getting a good contraction at the top. So at the top of each rep, even though it looks quick, I am flexing like a flex, as if I was sitting in front of the mirror trying to show off my muscles. So I am flexing at the contraction of each one to make sure that the biceps are fully engaged and they're getting a good pump out of the movement. Then to finish off the workout, I did some dumbbell curls with an emphasis on the eccentric. The eccentric portion is this lowering portion when the working muscle is extending. The concentric portion is when the working muscle is contracting. So the eccentric portion, they found in studies, creates more damage to the tissue than the concentric portion. So if I'm taking a little bit of extra time during the eccentrics, it helps me create a little more damage out of the weight load that I'm using. I have previously injured both of my biceps doing strongman stuff, and it was just crap luck, bummer. So I can't curl a ton of weight. The most I would curl in this position, I don't know if you can see or not, is 40s. I have done the 50s, but they start to annoy my forearm a little bit. And then if I curl where I just do one arm, then the other arm, then one arm, then the other arm, I can get up to 60s or so, 60s, 70s, but I don't get good growth out of that. I have a very short upper arm bone, which means my biceps are shortened. And I find that for a shortened bicep anatomy, emphasizing the eccentrics creates better growth because you get better time under tension. And that's extremely important with a shortened muscle, just compared to genetically somebody with longer biceps. Okay, hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If you want to find out more from us, you can always go to our website, www.brutalirongym.com. We have a daily podcast, over 1,900 episodes. You can check that out at our website. Thank you for watching.